This is Wycombe Sounds on your Friday mid-morning. I hope your day is going well. Looking forward to the bank holiday. But first, I'm very pleased to say we can chat to Ross Jeavons from Wycombe, who you might recall when last we caught up with him. He was at Adams Park after completing quite a lengthy run. He's got another lengthy run in front of him as well, which we'll find out more about in a few moments' time. But first, very good morning to you, sir.
Good morning, Colin. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. How are you doing?
Yeah, not too bad, thank you. Not too bad, all things considered.
Of course. So you're speaking to us from John Radcliffe, and people might know a bit about the story, but tell us a bit about your son Corey, first of all.
Yeah, sure. So Corey's he's 6 months old. He was born in February this year. He was born with a rare condition called TOFS, OA or Tracheo-Oesophageal Fistula and Esophageal Atresia. So that basically means, in layman's terms, that he was born unable to swallow. So it's very rare, as you can imagine. About 1 in 25 children are born in the UK each year with the condition to the extent that he has, which effectively means that his esophagus isn't connected to his stomach. So he has undergone 4 major surgeries now, the first 2 of which, when he was just born, effectively tried and failed to repair that esophagus, that gap. And then the most recent surgery he actually had on Monday this week, which is called a gastric pull-up, when they effectively turn his stomach into a tube and put it up into his neck to replace his esophagus. So yeah, he's been through an awful lot in his little life, bless him. And he's currently in the ICU unit at John Radcliffe, Oxford, as you say, kind of recovering from that surgery and awaiting next steps.
It must have been such a shock for you and your wife, obviously, initially to find out that Corey has this, and then to kind of get him through it as well, if you like.
Yeah, it was. So, I mean, the first we knew of it, to be honest, was, or first we had an inkling, was around 30 weeks of pregnancy, or a little bit later, when my wife Katie was big. Her bump was very big, and this is our second son. So we kind of had an inkling that was a bit unusual. And effectively, through all the scans, they established that there was obviously some kind of issue. They weren't quite sure what, but they thought there might be a blockage in his esophagus at that point. And they could also tell that one of his kidneys didn't look like it was functioning. And they said to us that that could mean a number of things, but one of the options could be that it is this condition. And then the first thing they did when he was born was they put effectively a tube down his throat to see how far it goes, and it stopped at the bottom of his neck, the base of his neck. And yeah, that was the moment it all came to reality, really. And he was wheeled straight down to the neonatal intensive care unit at that point at John Radcliffe. But I think that first initial shock certainly came during pregnancy, and we'd almost had a few weeks after that, before the birth, to come to terms with it.
Because obviously it's hard to imagine, isn't it, not being able to swallow, and I guess in a way it's nice that obviously he's so young and probably obviously not aware of it, but it must be so difficult for him to be able to sort of just do normal things like swallow, obviously.
Yeah, exactly. So it's one of the things that we often get told by nurses and surgeons and doctors, and everyone is the advantage of this situation is he is so young, and whilst his life will be different moving forward, that he won't remember some of this horrible stuff like surgeries and being on ventilators and stuff like that. So yeah, I mean, at the moment, or certainly previously, for the first 6 months, he was fed through a gastrostomy, which is a tube into his stomach. And he had, again, a slightly rarer thing called an esophagostomy, which is like a hole in your neck. So when he swallowed, obviously the usual saliva and all that kind of gunk that we all get rid of every day, it would come out the hole in his neck. So we've had to spend a lot of time caring for that and using gauze and bits and pieces. But he's obviously not been fussy. Obviously breastfeeding, things like that, quite difficult for many babies, but with him, he doesn't really have a choice. So he's always just had milk pumped into him, and he's gotten lots and lots of weight. He's a big boy now. He's kind of 7 kilograms. So yeah, and now this is the big point in his life, really, when we're hopeful, and he's still kind of touch and go at the moment, but if he recovers well over the next few weeks and months, then this operation will allow him to at least have some kind of normality in terms of feeding orally.
And how have you and Katie been doing? Because obviously, you've had to sort of cope with all this, but also, you've got, I see, another son as well, so sort of looking after him too.
Yeah, it's not easy. I guess, as you briefly touched upon there, we've been through stuff in the past which has allowed us to form coping mechanisms and stuff like that. I mean, Katie's been absolutely incredible in everything that she's done as well. It's always made more complicated by things like COVID, obviously, the kind of legacy of that, meaning that visiting hours or kind of visiting restrictions in hospitals are still quite stringent. So we're the only 2 people allowed to go in and see Corey, which obviously makes it difficult for the rest of his family, but also makes it difficult because Callum at home, his brother's 2 years old, and it effectively means we're juggling the 2 boys constantly because he can't be in with us. So one of us will be at home with Callum, and one of us will be in hospital with Corey, effectively, and kind of never the two shall meet. So we're just trying to get through that at the moment.
Well, hopefully, as you touched on, that he'll be able to, recover from this surgery and really benefit from the procedure, and as you say, hopefully get to live as normal life as possible.
Yeah, exactly. Those are the next steps. So the next few days are crucial, really, when we just wait and see if that recovery is going as planned. And then after that, he'll have a lot of medical appointments, a lot of different steps, I guess, that we need to go through to help him through life. Children of his condition tend to have a lot more chest and lung infections, for instance. And when they eat, they kind of eat differently to you or I, so they'd have to drink a lot of water whilst they eat different foods, they eat a lot slower than others. But you read stories, and we've been given lots of stories of the different children who've gone through it and the adults who go through it, and certainly they live long and happy lives, just helping them along that path.
And one positive thing for you is to be able to raise awareness of this and perhaps be able to do something to help as well.
Yeah, that's right. So, it wasn't something I was planning on doing, to be honest, because as we've spoken about, kind of have enough on our plate. But a couple of weeks ago, we saw a message from TOFS, who are the charity that look after people with Corey's condition, and effectively said that we've had a late pull-out from our London Marathon places. Obviously, I work for a charity myself. I know they cost a lot of money for charities often to get these places in the London Marathon. They said, can anyone fill in and stand in for this injury replacement? So it was kind of a snap decision, probably a slightly stupid decision, and I said, yeah, I'll do it. Having done a lot of running in the past, but not run since Corey was born, so not really run at all for 6 months. I've given myself 8 weeks to train, but it's a great opportunity to raise awareness, to do things like this, and obviously, more importantly, I guess, to raise a bit of money for what is quite a small charity that has a big impact. So that's our aim, really.
So how are you fitting in your training with everything else?
With great difficulty, ironically at the moment, because Corey is very heavily sedated, so there isn't actually a lot we can do. We're by his bedside a lot of the time, but one of us will be staying in the hotel overnight, and one of us is in the hospital, I should say, overnight, and one of us is at home. So tends to be getting up some very early runs in the morning from the hospital before I go down and then see him and spend the day with him. But I think the complex part will come hopefully next week, when he starts to wake up and he's not paralysed and not sedated, and we'll want to be with him pretty much all the time then, because he'll be obviously very conscious. So I haven't thought that far ahead, to be honest, Colin. I'm just going to try and work it out as we go along and try and get to that finish line at some point. I
was going to say, I imagine as well, I can't imagine doing a marathon, to be honest, but I imagine that obviously Corey's condition and being able to raise awareness will really drive you on the day.
Yeah, I think so, and it's actually quite refreshing in the fact that having done a fair bit of running in the past, it has often been quite like performance-led. Might sound like quite a grand term, but looking for a certain time or to push myself to my limit, or whatever it is. Whereas now it's literally like, I'm doing it for this reason, and I'm also just hoping to finish. If I finish, that's an achievement, and I've not really had that before. So, I'm kind of taking the pressure off myself in that respect, and just trying to get out there when I can, and hopefully do enough over the next 6 weeks or so to get that medal and bring it back to Corey.
It's a fantastic sort of challenge to be able to undertake, and I'm sure so rewarding at the end as well when you do cross the line, and hopefully Corey will be there to see you as well.
Yeah, we really hope so. It's really difficult to say at this stage how long he'll be in here. So it's been about 4 days now. We were told initially anything from a month to 2 months, but obviously it depends how long of any complications that arise and bits and pieces like that. And even if he is out, he might not be in a position to drag him up to the centre of town. But that'd be the ideal scenario, certainly, to see him at the finish line. From experience of running the London Marathon, there's usually about another 2 miles to walk to get out of the finish line and see any loved ones anyway. But that would be great. But if not, whether it's at the hospital, whether it's at home, obviously we'll go and show him the medal, and I'm sure he'll be picking it up and put it in his mouth, knowing Corey.
I didn't realise that. So you've run 26.2 miles, and then you've got another 2 miles to do, but obviously at a different pace. That's a lot better.
Yeah, I might be exaggerating slightly. Last time I did the marathon, I was pretty much out on my feet at the end, and then usually, you don't have your phone on you or anything if you've not run with a phone, so you're just like slowly crawling to the nearest tube stop, which is quite some distance by the time you've got past all the cordons and things like that. So yeah, it's kind of things you don't see on TV, I guess. Well,
though in a strange way, you can probably look forward to being at that point.
Yeah, exactly. It seems like a long way off at the moment, but it'll come around sooner than I realise, I think.
So have you got a target of how much money you'd like to raise?
Not really. So the initial or the kind of the target that the charity would set a normal runner, if you like, is £1,500 to almost cover their costs, and obviously then to raise money for the charity as well. That is for someone usually, I guess, who'd have a bit longer than 8 weeks or 6 weeks to train and raise money. So that was our initial target. We've actually not too far away from that at the moment. We've raised about, I think, £1,200 at last look, which is amazing. And there's some really kind of generous donations from families and friends and strangers as well. So going to keep pushing and keep asking for the generosity of people, even such a difficult time financially for everyone, I guess, and see where we get to. But anything from here on in is a bonus, I'd say.
So tell us a bit about what the money will be used for as well, what the charity does.
Sure. So TOFS, first and foremost, amazing support for families who are going through or who live with children or loved ones with this condition. So they provide a lot of information, which is vital. To give a tangible example, they actually produce a full book, probably this thick, not very helpful on radio, I know, but I don't know, maybe about 100 pages long, which goes into really intricate detail about the condition, what it means, what the potential issues are, what the types of surgery that can correct it are, how life can then be lived after those surgeries. It gives case studies of people who have lived through the condition in various different forms. And actually, it's because the condition is so rare, what you often find is that not just family and friends, but often doctors, nurses, medical professionals would never have heard it before, or they would never have seen a person with that condition before. So with the support of TOFS, you're able to share information with people like that to help them understand a little bit more what your child is going through and what their needs are, which is amazing. But obviously, they also are working towards a world where hopefully people with Corey's condition actually live a bit more normal lives in future through research and additional support and things like that, which, it seems like a long way off at the moment, but if we can contribute to that and help that in some way, that means that people who are born like Corey, maybe in 50 years time or whatever it might be, will have to undergo less extensive surgery or will be able to live more normal lives. That'll be incredible.
But I guess as well, you and Katie have been really pleased with the support that you've received, both from the charity but also from the hospital as well.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And it's not just on Radcliffe Hospital. It's we've been under the care of Stoke Mandeville as well, and the hospital in Wycombe. Obviously we've seen probably so many medical professionals that you could fill a book with the amount of consultants and nurses and surgeons that we've seen on a daily basis. But it does really back up all the cliches about the NHS, if you like, and the incredible support they give, certainly in a situation like we are now in the intensive care unit with the types of round-the-clock 24-hour care that Corey's getting from the nurses here. They're just great human beings. They're lovely people, and he wouldn't be here without them. So we are incredibly grateful. So
let us know how people can support you in your challenge.
Sure. So I think the best way to do it is probably just to Google my name. So Ross Jeavons, Jeavons. And if you go onto my Twitter page and my Instagram page, then there's details there about how to support, how to log onto our fundraising page. And you can find a bit more information about Corey there as well.
Oh, it's fantastic. Well, we wish Corey all the best, obviously, and loads of love to you and your family as well, and hopefully that you and Katie can have a really great ending to this story, and that you get loads of support for your marathon challenge, and perhaps speak to you a bit nearer the time as well. So all the best with your training too.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks for your support. Thank you.
Ross from Wycombe speaking to us here at Wycombe Sound.
Online, on Radio Player, and on 106.6 FM. This is Wycombe Sound.